Hey guys, it's COREROSS, and today we are testing a new audio system within Siege X. And this overhauled audio system will be launching with a new season that is Operation Daybreak on June 10th. In today's video, we'll give you the basics on how it all works and the problems you might run into, along with also the positives. So first of all, we'll start with some of the stuff that isn't changing with the audio system. So this is a little example here on bank, and we have an attacker outside. They're going to run down the ramp, then they're going to climb up and start shooting outside this window. So let's listen to the audio and then we'll break it down. So in that clip, we could hear the attacker quite far away, going all the way down that ramp, then climbing up onto the police car and then onto the outside structure here. The glass then acts as a very good sound dampener as the gunfire happens outside, until it is smashed and then it becomes far clearer. So right off the bat, you might think, wow, you can actually hear the attacker running all the way down the ramp. That's quite impressive. You could have done maybe a jump out based on that audio cue. But actually, that would be placebo, because you can already hear that in the live version of the game. I'll play a clip of that in a second. But the big difference you're going to hear when I play the clip of the live game is that we hear all the same audio cues, but it is presented to us in a very different way. So let's listen to the live version and then we'll break it all down. So that is the live version of the game right now. So what will effectively be the old version, of course, when Siege X comes out. In my initial impressions, and I'll be interested to see what you guys think too after hearing those two clips, is that the live version or the old version is clearer and crisper. But the Siege X version is muddier, but with more detail or more information that you can break down from it. And as such, it can become very subjective to which one you prefer. And I would say that the old version has a very crisp audio to the point of where it sounds louder than the Siege X version does. Because of the Siege X version's reverberation, it sounds quieter. But it's actually, when I'm editing it now, and this is the thing, when I edit it and I look at it, the audio levels are almost exactly the same. And the thing that really is interesting is where the sound is coming from, which channels it's playing through. And it's quite interesting that I'm sitting here editing this video and I'm just watching the different levels play out on these clips. And I can see that the one for Siege X is given much better directional audio than the live version of the game. Now let's shrink this down to a couple of audio clips. And I'm actually going to ditch the visuals. You're not going to see any gameplay here. And it's just going to be a small clip of Siege X, small clip of the live, and we'll go back and forward a couple of times. And this audio is specifically the attacker coming down the ramp and vaulting up onto the police car. So I wonder if you agree with me here that the old version is louder and clearer, even though the audio levels are pretty much the same. But there's one thing that is dramatically different. You'll hear this, of course, if you're wearing headphones, and that is that in Siege X, the audio is coming from the correct direction. It is coming from mostly the right-hand side, whereas the old version, the audio is coming from straight ahead, even though that's not where the player is. So my feeling here is this is actually a pretty big win for Siege X, because I was really expecting that this was mostly going to be adding reverberation to the sounds, tweaking things a few places. I wasn't actually expecting this. So that's good. Better directional sound is a major improvement here. But this is just the first of the tests. And the way I'm making this video is I am going through this, testing it and recording the audio as we go. So as we actually progress through the video, you'll see how my impressions either go up or down based on what we're finding out. Now we'll do another comparison. Again, I'm going to black out the screen where I play the audio, and this is specifically when the recruit is on the other side of the window firing their weapon. Now again, the old audio is crisper, clearer, and seems louder, but again, the directional audio is off. In the old version, it's coming from the right-hand side, where of course the gunfire is directly in front of us, and in the new version, the directional audio is correct. And the thing about that is in the previous clip, the operator was on the right-hand side, but the audio was centered. And now that the operator is centered, the audio is off to the right, which is mental. So CGX again wins. It seems to fix a major issue here, and that's good. Now let's move on to something I really like, and that is the above and below noises. I'll also note that I'm not going to do any more comparisons with the live version of the game at this point. We're just going to be continuing to break down Siege X, because otherwise we're going to be here all day. So this is a change here that I really like, and this is because I am great with visual cues, but audio cues not so much. So in the current version of Siege, I cannot really differentiate between someone above me or someone below me, whereas in this, I can 100% tell the difference, which is nice. There's also even a slight difference when halfway up the stairs and halfway down the stairs. I'll play those back to back right now. And then I can also hear that this is a game because we hear the abrupt change when the player changes level. Like there's just this point where the game goes, okay, you're on the next level, different audio now. And it's not like it cuts in and out or anything like that, but it's just that abrupt change from one audio type to another as they cross that threshold. And my verdict on this one is that it sounds really good. Now let's talk about the reverberation in the room. So this is where the CGX might falter when it comes to its audio system, because reverberation has been added to pretty much every bit of sound, and it's useful, but there's a lot of people who say that it makes the audio muddy and hard to understand, especially when a lot is going on. If you can imagine that there's a bunch of gunfire, there's gadgets going off, and all of that has different reverberations on it, it could end up kind of coalescing into a mess of audio. So let's do a controlled test here so that you can get an idea of what this means for gunfire audio in different room sizes. So certainly there is a big difference between a gunshot in an open room, a small room, and the room that you are in. And the room that you are in is the one that sounds the most normal compared to normal Siege gunfire. And I think this is where there's going to be a big battle about Siege X's audio, because the people who want this extra information about room size might well find it really useful to locate and pinpoint enemies to then get the best shot off. But then there's going to be players who want the crisper audio, who don't really care about room size, who just want good audio with a good direction, and that's their priority. Now let me just quickly play back the audio from these three different rooms in quick succession to show you how different they are. Now let's move on and talk about, or well, listen to 360 degrees of audio. So I've set up in a room with the doors closed and no holes in any walls, and we're just going to have Buck do a 360 degree run all around us, and we're just going to listen to the audio, and then we're going to do a test where we add destruction. So we were able to hear Buck go all the way around the conference room entirely. We never once lost audio contact with him, and the directional information was always correct. Now let's add some good old destruction and see how the audio changes. So you can hear pretty clearly how the audio changes with destruction. And that means that the sound is now moving through those holes you have created. Now, I can't imagine how complex it is to set that audio system up, and it must be a pain in the butt to maintain. But this works exactly how it does in the live game, where the audio starts going through the breaches. But the big difference here is it sounds like the directional audio is, again, always correct, whereas the live game sometimes has a lot of issues when it comes to destruction and the audio kind of coming from the right location. You can also hear with this one the added reverberations yet again on the character movement. And again, when you mix all that together with all the action that can be going on in a game, it could indeed get that muddy feel and potentially become too noisy to actually understand. Now let's talk about some of the smaller details of the audio system. So first of all, we'll talk about different surfaces your character is actually on. So running on marble, running on wood, running on carpet, all have different audio levels. Your character also makes a lot of noise when leaning and aiming down sights. And then some stuff is unchanged between the new and the old, like for instance that drone holes do not conduct any sound. And then finally, there's big changes coming to the audio settings in the game as well. And you should look at playing around with these settings to see what works best for you. But here's the rundown. So the old audio settings, which were called night mode, TV mode, and hi-fi, are all being deleted. And they will be replaced with a dynamic range setting, and you'll either have high or low. However, this is currently not in the test server. We're in the second week of the test server right now. We've got one more week left, and this setting hasn't yet made it in. So we'll see if it makes it in on time, but this may get added in later if it doesn't. But what it means by changing this setting is that gunshots and explosives will simply not be as loud. So as a result, you can bump the overall audio volume up, giving you better understanding of what's going on with like footsteps and such without having to blow your ears out with the gunshots going off. So when this setting does get added into the game, either with the Siege X launch or in a later patch, do play around with it because it might be useful to you. And then there's a whole new setting in the game to do with flashbang and stun effects. So this is removing the tinnitus sound effect. So this is the ringing in the ears audio that plays when you get flashbanged or stunned or are near an explosion or such. And this part can now be switched either entirely off by going for a mute setting, or you can also go for a wave setting. Now I'm not going to play the normal flashbang audio. I do have a dedicated video looking at this setting if you want to go check it out, where I do a full comparison. But I will let you hear the mute and wave versions here. And the reason for this additional setting is to remove the pain and discomfort that tinnitus noise actually gives people who have tinnitus. And I also had a surprising amount of people saying that the wave option they actually just really like, which was really funny to hear. Now that brings us to the conclusion of this video, and we got a lot to take away from it. So first of all, this is more of a first look or first listen to the new Siege X, as I'm definitely going to come back and make a much more comprehensive and hopefully more compressed version of this video that will cover every little thing in the future. But I'm probably going to wait at least a couple of patches into Siege X's launch just to make sure any bugs or issues are hopefully ironed out before I go and make that video, as that's going to be very time consuming. But what I've learned in today's video and my overall conclusion is that I think people are going to hate this and people are going to love it. I think there's a lot to enjoy here and a lot to potentially not be happy with. And I think it's going to come down to who can adapt to it. So I think the first thing is delete what you know about Siege audio out of your head and relearn it from scratch. And I think you'll do really good. And I think you're probably going to be really excellent at tracking people down with this new audio. Now, I do think the reverberations could come back to bite us in the ass, especially when things just get really intense and the audio might end up just becoming too noisy, effectively. The other thing is, how well is it actually going to be in the live game when it's released? Is it going to be perfectly fine? We're going to pick up everything we should, or is there going to be that usual ash that runs up behind you that you just do not hear and they just sprint up behind you and melee you? Is it going to be the case that some stuff just still won't work right? But I do definitely see improvements. Basically, the best thing I found from today's test was the audio direction is significantly better than it is. And because of that, you should have a better understanding of where people are without getting bamboozled by them being in a different direction. So far, this looks like an upgrade. And then the audio itself, I feel like it comes with a lot more information than it previously did, especially for me. Above and below is now much more identifiable. And I think it's possible that I will be able to use the reverberations of different room sizes to my advantage, but I don't know how much of a difference that'll make, because in most Siege maps, if I have a direction, I already know the room they're in just off the directions, but once I start playing this in the live servers, it might be the case that I end up getting better at locating my enemy than I normally would. So until I really get playing, and this is the thing, playing the test server is always very different from playing the live servers. So I'm going to leave that till I actually get the hands on the live version and really play it a lot, especially in things like ranked. And then my main prediction here is that on launch day, we're going to have a ton of people saying, please revert back to the audio system. And it's going to be like rank 2.0. They're going to be like, go back to 1.0. And they're going to be like, go back to Siege Audio 1.0, please. And I think a lot of people are going to be pissed and they're going to see this audio as being extremely muddy. So I'm curious if that will end up being a prediction that I get right and a lot of people are going to be pissed off at it, or if the player base actually ends up embracing it fully, and maybe I'll be wrong on that. So that would be cool if I am. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below and I'll catch you next time.